Welcome to the Inside Elections podcast, where we analyze elections in a nonpartisan, data-driven, and accessible way. In this special episode, we'll talk to one of the godfathers of nonpartisan political analysis and the founder of the Rothenberg Political Report, Stuart Rothenberg, about the beginnings of modern political handicapping, nonpartisan journalism, and some of its favorite moments covering elections for more than 4 decades. Buckle up. I'm Nathan Gonzales, editor and publisher of Inside Elections, the go-to place for nonpartisan analysis for more than 40 years. And I will be spending July 4th here in the District of Columbia, which still does not have a voting member of Congress.
And I'm Jacob Rubashkin, deputy editor of Inside Elections, and I'm spending the 4th in Tennessee's 1st Congressional District, which is currently represented by Republican Diana Harshbarger, who I believe may be the member of Congress who won their first primary election by the lowest percentage of the vote to get to Congress.
And that percentage was?
Excellent question. 19.2%.
Oh my goodness. 19.2% of a primary, which isn't even the general election.
Five candidates, all in the teens, and another 4 candidates who got more than 1%. So a very evenly divided field to replace. I believe Congressman Phil Rowe is who Harshbarger replaced.
Okay. Well, it's good that we are spending the 4th on different ends of the political spectrum. I think Tennessee's 4th is probably slightly more conservative than DC, so it's good to have that balance.
That is probably the case.
we can unify around the birth date of our nation, so that's all good. Before we bring in Stu, let's run through some headlines. Jacob, kick us off.
So in Nebraska, Republican Don Bacon shook up the House map by announcing that he would not seek re-election to his light blue Omaha district. It's one of just 3 seats represented by a Republican that Kamala Harris won in 2024. Bacon's been a thorn in the side of Democrats ever since he won that seat in 2016, and there are already crowded primaries brewing on both sides of the aisle to replace him in what is now Democrats' best chance at flipping a seat in the House, getting one closer to the 3 they need to reclaim the majority.
And we'll include the link to your great write-up, including a bunch of the candidates that are running or potentially running. People can click on that for more information. There are 2 more open House seats, but in solid districts. Democratic Congressman Dwight Evans is not running for re-election in Pennsylvania's 3rd district, but Kamala Harris won his Philadelphia area seat with 88% in 2024. So that will be a fight in the Democratic primary. And then Republican Congressman Dusty Johnson is running for governor in South Dakota. So Republicans will fight to replace him in a district where President Trump received 63%.
Senator Tom Tillis surprised observers by announcing Sunday afternoon that he will not run for a 3rd term in North Carolina. And that means that one of the most competitive states in the nation will host an open Senate race, a must-win for Democrats looking to reclaim the majority. Now, nobody has announced yet, but speculation has centered on the Democratic side on former Governor Roy Cooper, and on the Republican side, Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump.
Yeah, Republicans will try to avoid a messy primary there. Democrat James Walkinshaw won the recent Democratic primary in Virginia's 11th district to replace the late Jerry Connolly. Walkinshaw, who is Connolly's former chief of staff, is the heavy favorite to win the September 9th special general election, and he would be sworn into Congress soon after the results would be certified. Democrats still have 2 more vacancies yet to be filled with special elections from other members who passed away. But Virginia 11 is coming to a close.
Stu Rothenberg, editor and publisher of the Rothenberg Political Report.
Our guest for the next couple of hours is Stuart Rothenberg, who is editor and publisher of Rothenberg Political Report and a national political analyst. We're back for the home stretch of C-SPAN's election night coverage. Two special guests in our studios here in Washington, D.C. Stuart Rothenberg, who is a publisher and editor of the Political Report.
From Washington, Stuart Rothenberg, editor and publisher of the Rothenberg Political Report.
Stu Rothenberg is one of the most respected political analysts in the land. He puts out the Rothenberg Political Report.
For more on what President Obama's strategy is, Stu Rothenberg, editor of the Rothenberg Report, joins us now.
Stu Rothenberg, he's editor of the Rothenberg Political Report, of course, a contributor and columnist for CQ Roll Call.
We turn to Politics Monday with Tamara Keith of NPR and Stuart Rothenberg of the Rothenberg and Gonzales Political Report.
Well, Scott, I spent a good part of today with the two most respected political analysts in the country, Charlie Cook and Stu Rothenberg. Their publications are the Bibles for political reporters.
I'm joined by Stu Rothenberg, senior editor of Inside Elections.
Well, that was a fun walk down memory lane. And now it's my turn to introduce Stu Rothenberg, founder of the Rothenberg Political Report, which is the predecessor to and foundation for Inside Elections. Stu is a roll call columnist. He was a CNN contributor. But most importantly, at least to me, Stu is a friend and a mentor and the reason why I am here today. So Stu, welcome to the podcast.
That was really cool. Can I have a copy of it, please?
Sure.
So I can show my children.
I know some people. We can maybe pull some strings to make that happen.
That was really cool. I forgot I did all that stuff.
There were some that I hadn't. The Charlie Rose one, and then there was one where it was when it was just the Political Report, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
So you're not a normal guest, but we ask all of our guests what district they grew up in. Now I know that. We'll call this the early years. You grew up in what is now New York's 12th district. And so tell people, we'll treat this like a candid interview. What did your parents do for a living and what was life like growing up in New York 12?
So I grew up in the Upper West Side of New York. That's how we would describe it. A nice area, not the fanciest, not the Park Avenue or Fifth Avenue on the East Side, but an area that now is very popular. My father was in the shirt business. It was not his business. It was his brother's business. My mom was a stay-at-home Manhattan wife, who didn't drive, never learned to drive a car because she grew up in the city. And I had one sister who was 6 years older than I am. We had very different views. I tended toward the family agenda, which was anything articulated by somebody named Rockefeller, Javits, Ken Keating, kind of liberal Republicans. And my sister was she was a radical lefty. And so there was always this tension between, I was the young one who was the establishment person, and she was a radical revolutionary. Probably fits a number of families. That I'm probably not the only one that came from something like that. So
there's a lot that got up to the political handicapping. But if we start in 1980, when you were hired to be editor of something called the Political Report, and a few years later you had the opportunity to take it on as your own. At what point did you realize that political analysis might be a viable occupation?
Well, it was when some guy called me and he said his name was Charlie Cook and he was thinking of starting a newsletter. And I laughed because I was running this newsletter through what was called the Free Congress Research and Education Foundation, which was a very conservative think tank run by Paul Weyrich, who I had never heard of when I took the job. You can tell I was a little behind the curve, or the curve was yet to come. And I didn't really fit in with most of their agenda, but they had this job, somebody who could write and report on elections and I knew something about Congress, and when you're in graduate school, you have a number of different programs and types of classes. So although my field was international politics, I had a field in American government and politics, and I was interested in it from a sports point of view. We had the Almanac of American Politics with us in graduate school when I roomed with somebody who's just getting a doctorate in psychology. So I said to Charlie, I don't see how you could make any money, and I'm working this newsletter through this foundation, but I can't imagine actually throwing off enough revenue to be successful with it. And Charlie says, well, I was meeting with a guy named Kevin Phillips. Remember Kevin Phillips? Anybody raise your hand if
only
you remember
through you.
Kevin
Yeah.
Phillips?
through the story.
Kevin Phillips, who he wrote a couple of really big books about American politics. He told Charlie that you don't really make a living with the newsletter. You make a living getting speeches and doing research for people. And that's the way you can be successful. And Charlie thought this was a great idea, and I thought it was crazy. But I tended to be very conservative financially. I didn't want to risk something. I was in my mid-30s at the time, I think. But Charlie went ahead with it, and through a series of flukes, Charlie got in the business of having a handicapping newsletter, and I turned my newsletter into more of a handicapping vehicle, and we succeeded somehow.
And at the time, and kind of at what point did you begin to understand that you and Charlie and then later Larry were essentially creating kind of a new field of political handicapping? This was something that I know there were one or two people who were doing somewhat similar things previously.
Alan Barron was doing it from the Democratic side. Kevin Phillips was doing it more from the Republican and conservative side. They talked about Capitol Hill. They talked about somewhat of campaigns, but it was not primarily a campaign vehicle or campaign handicapping. When did I know that there might, or start thinking about whether there was something there to make a living and to be successul? Jacob, I don't think I thought of things that way. I was just doing one day at a time. I mean, you have to remember, I told Paul I wanted to leave, and I wanted him to give me the newsletter, and to reimburse me with the subscription income that he had already taken in, because I couldn't live without either cash. I needed cash flow, or I needed income that was going to come in from the newsletter. And Paul said yes. And so I took the newsletter private, and I can't remember, Nathan, you looked it up. I think it's 1988 or 89. It might well have been 1989. And 2 or 3 years later, I was looking to join the newsletter with somebody else because I didn't think I was going to make it. I mean, I wasn't generating enough cash for me. It may have been generating enough cash for Charlie, but not for me. And so I sent out letters and made phone calls and talked to people at GW, School of Campaign Management, and American University. And I was trying to, there's some way I can attach myself and my newsletter to someplace to give me more of a chance of surviving. So up until 1993, 94, really 93, there was a 4 or 5 year period there where I didn't feel like I was establishing a new medium or a new platform. I felt like I was just trying to swim to the shore to survive.
One thing that I'm also pretty curious about is, given your background kind of coming out of academia, do you feel like coming at this from the angle of someone with a PhD, how did that kind of affect how you approached the kind of rough and tumble, very in the moment field of ongoing campaigns and politics and elections? What was that transition like, going from the ivory tower to, the world of political handicapping, and how do you think that informed your perspective on all these questions?
Well, it certainly humbled me. I wanted to have the degree, and because I thought it said something about research and expertise and writing and teaching, and I liked students an awful lot. I had really good student evaluations. Hard to believe. I know it's hard to believe, but when I was younger, I had really good student evaluations. And so I taught for 3 years at Bucknell, but I was on sabbatical replacement contracts, basically. Somebody in the political science department went on a sabbatical. They hired me for the year. Then somebody else went on sabbatical. And they said, well, do you want to stay another year? And I said, sure. Then the next year, somebody else went on a sabbatical. And they said, do you want to stay another year? And I said, okay. And then the next year, I think somebody else, they got a new position. And it was clear that they were not going to hire me. And they said, what one of the faculty members, one of my colleagues, said to me was, you got to get the hell out of here and get publications. It's all about publications. And you got to get out here and write more articles, because I only had one article. And so at that point, it became clear to me I needed to change fields. I had a couple of interviews, one at Southwest Texas State and another at a small college where there's a small liberal arts college in northeastern Tennessee where I interviewed. Those were the two places I had interviews. Nobody offered me a job, and at that point I understood I needed to change careers. I don't know. Maybe I was more entrepreneurial than I thought. Like the Jewish peddler with the cart and mixing the spoons and selling, I don't know, milk. So maybe I had some of that in me, though I never thought I was entrepreneurial, never considered that I would somehow help or play a role in creating a whole new business. But I guess I did.
Well, so in 1996, the Washington Post recognized your effort and Charlie's effort. They did a big profile on you and Charlie. What did that mean to the two of you, or how did that, what role did that play in your career?
We thought it was really cool. I mean, when I think of the things that happened, the things that were really cool, it was a Howie Kurtz piece. For the Washington Post. He was a media reporter, and it was just made us feel as though we had accomplished something, and it kind of crossed the line. The other thing that rewarded us and made us think that we had something to sell was, the back of the Wall Street Journal, they have those dot pictures.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys don't know that.
Yeah,
Nathan, you don't know the dot?
Yeah.
So I was in one picture and Charlie was in another picture. And I thought that was really cool too. And then all the television. But I didn't know how successful we were. It's not like I tried to be. It's not like I tried to break through and create a new field. It's just that I stumbled into the job.
Did obviously, you and Charlie have this long relationship, and you've been friends and speaking partners, and but also competitors, and working kind of the two titans of this new field. Was there ever any point where you two talked about going into business together and actually just combining the newsletters and working on one joint venture?
I raised it 2 or 3 times, and Charlie showed no interest. So I figured, well, okay. I was just looking. We always checked in on each other, see how we were doing, and give each other advice. And it wasn't advice out of self-interest. It was advice just because we were friends. But otherwise, I know I could count on Charlie. If he had a new, I remember once he said, we wrote something, and we had a regular series on congressional districts. And Charlie said, "Oh, this is really so good. We're going to do the same sort of thing." And I actually tried to talk him out of it. And I did talk him out of it. I was saying, "Charlie, you're already doing so well. I'm just trying to stumble along here. I need to keep this series as a for our identity." And Charlie was a great guy, and he probably knew he was doing better than I was. There was never any on my part, and I don't believe on his part, competition to say I want to be number one. Maybe he felt strongly when he wanted to be number one. I just wanted to have a good job with good income, where I could go to the kids' dance recitals or softball games, and that was more important to me.
Yeah, and I know that I enjoyed that freedom and flexibility when I started working with you, and that was and continues to be an attractive piece of being able to do this. So the bedrock of the business, or a lot of this, is being nonpartisan. I think that's what has made you an attractive analyst and columnist and commentator for so long. What a lot of people ask me, and so I'll ask you, what was the secret to being nonpartisan for so long and developing relationships and even friendships with people and sources on both sides of the aisle?
I never understood that was a big deal, how hard that was supposed to be. Look, Nathan, you're a sports fan. I don't know what teams you're rooting for these days. Oakland A's? Are you still rooting for the Oakland A's?
That's rougher. I'll root for the Nats are number one in baseball, but that can be tough at times too.
That's a much better prospects there.
Okay, you can go to a Nats game and watch it and have an opinion on who's playing well, who's hitting well. How does the pitcher need to be replaced? Who to call on the bullpen? It's analytics, I guess, analysis. I never found it hard. I mean, that's one of the things that I found appealing about graduate school and getting a doctorate, and it was that I could kind of talk dispassionately and didn't have to be advocate. I go to games. This is not worthy of all this time we're about to give it. But when I go to a hockey game or a baseball game, I don't stand up and chill and go cheer and go, yeah, go get. Yeah, I don't do that. I just sit there and watch, because it's not about cheering. I don't understand why people cheer. For me, it's going to the game to watch the game, watch who's hitting and who's not, and why did they bunt that play, and why do they keep swing on low outside splitters when they know the ball's going to break late, So I always felt that I could be detached from from any opinion that I have, personal opinion I have, to other relationships. It was never a problem for me. I mean, I tend to dislike people who are jerks, are obnoxious, who are arrogant, who are we could, there are a lot of other words we could use, but I don't dislike somebody because they like the even the Boston Red Sox, a team that is, I'm a Yankees fan, so I despise the Red Sox, but I have a lot of good friends who are Red Sox fans, and that's how it should be.
Good thing there's so few arrogant jerks in politics. I'm sure you didn't. Sure you didn't run into very many of those.
I could have run down the list at the beginning, but I was wise. We were going to pass on that.
Now, a lot of our listeners have probably seen you or had you speak to their group over the years, and you mentioned this earlier in the conversation, the speaking piece of it. But how much did you enjoy that piece of the job, and how did that factor into everything that we're talking about?
Well, I enjoyed everything. I enjoyed writing for either the newsletter or roll call. I enjoyed. Speaking is so much fun when you're in front of the group and you have a command of the facts and information, and particularly when you're comfortable doing it, talking to the audience and joking around with the audience, and it was so much fun. I got the enjoyment out of it. I should have paid them to do that. They shouldn't have paid me, but they did pay me, thankfully.
Yeah, I don't think you should have offered. It was smarter not to offer that.
Well, which allows me to be in the basement here with my television behind me. It was great. And Charlie and I did it a lot together, but we also did plenty of things separate. I then went to do CNN as a political analyst, campaign analyst, election analyst from about 1994 to 2004 or 2004. Then 2006, I did election night for CBS in New York. I was Cheryl Atkinson's House and Senate analyst, and Charlie went over to NBC, and so we never were together on election night again, unfortunately. But I think at one point we did something maybe on the NewsHour together, but that would have been very early.
There would probably be banned, too much firepower. I don't think you could be on. There was probably a law against you two being on.
Mark Shields was on too, and he cracked me up. He was great. He knew politics and he knew how to entertain. Because when you're speaking, let's be honest, a lot of political speaking is political entertainment. I developed certain shtick where I would say, who comes from, let me know if you come from any of the following states. Raise your hand. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Maryland. And I go through the list, and they don't all be Democratic states. And I would say, keep your hands raised. Keep your hands raised. Oh, this is a very good looking group, very successful. But by the way, you're all irrelevant. And that they just started, they would laugh. And I was trying to make a point about competitive races, competitive states. And so it worked out well.
Now, we've just come up to the, I believe, 33rd year anniversary of you writing for Roll Call as a columnist. You've written a few columns. Are there any, what favorites or what favorites stick out in your mind?
My favorite, I got a couple that I wrote down actually, because I thought, well, you might ask me about this. I did a column on, like, for the 1000th time, please don't call them push polls. I did a thing about how push polls are not really surveys; they're not polls. If you're going to get public opinion, you don't call 30,000 people. You call 300 people or 500 people. And so I kept having to write the same article over and over again about please don't call them push polls, because people would drive me crazy. That's a way of discrediting surveys and survey research, and maybe survey research, not maybe, certainly it has flaws. Even now, it's worse now. But that push poll column, which ran a number of times, and I was always able to go back and recreate it and update it.
Well, and I that's still relevant. I saw someone refer to a push poll on Twitter yesterday, and I was thinking about pulling that column out.
Not to name any names, but I was at an event on Sunday with Virginia House Minority Leader Terry Kilgore, who gave a speech in which he talked about how the scourge of push polls and how he was talking about, campaign messaging tests and informed ballots and things like that. Yeah. So I think that's a fight that it's the good fight, but it's one that I think, I don't even know when the last time somebody did a real push poll was. I feel like I've never, not since the John McCain, 2000, George, did you know John McCain illegitimately fathered a child, right? Like that's the last one I've ever actually heard about. That's a real push poll.
Yeah. That, no, I think you're right. And the problem is there's no way to kill it. It's like Bela Lugosi. It comes back and you try to drive a stake through the heart of this question of the topic of push poll. It doesn't matter. It survives, but I keep doing it. I tend to do stuff like that. If once I got something, if I got my jaws into it, I keep pushing, keep fighting. There was another one here. Oh, and this one got me in trouble. I think this one actually affected my career, but I've only started thinking that recently, but maybe I'm wrong. It was called Twitter Can't Yet Predict Elections. Some guy named Fabio Rojas. Fabio Rojas was a sociologist at the University of Indiana. And he came up with this theory that you could predict elections through who was tweeting and how many tweets. And I just went bananas and I wrote, I don't know, but I ended up attacking National Journal and it was Washington Post that ran an op-ed on it. They ran an op-ed on can Twitter predict elections? And I'm thinking, what kind of idiot do they not have any copy, normal copy? They have to publish this crap. And then Chuck Todd had an afternoon show that was it wasn't called Meet the Press Daily, but it was another daily show. And I don't know, sometimes I went really hard at people, but when they did something that I thought was really stupid, and that might have alienated some people, but it was fun.
I remember a column when you went after one of the Backstreet Boys for testifying on the Hill, and then I remember getting a call from his agent, and he apparently wanted to talk to you, but they were in the studio. But it looked like it was going to happen, and I was waiting for this call for you from this agent of I think Kevin from the Backstreet Boys, and he didn't end up calling.
Kevin Richardson was his name, the Backstreet Boys. And his fan club went after me. I got tons of text messages and emails and whatever it was, attacking me and how dare I demean Kevin Richardson. I don't know, it was crazy. But yeah, that was a good one.
Well, and on a very different tone or subject, I thought some of your most powerful columns were when you wrote about Senator Tim Johnson of South Dakota, or even Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords and their traumatic brain injuries, because you and Elaine, your wife, and went through that with Ben, your son, a traumatic brain injury. And I thought that those combining your real life, real world family experience with the political world kind of brought a powerful insight into two very interesting political situations. But those columns also stuck out
Yeah,
to me.
that was particularly the Gabby Giffords one was one of the best I ever wrote. Have been the best. Thank you for bringing that up and reminding me. I mean it seriously, for reminding me of that. Some people, I think it was Chris Feliza, wrote a column saying that this was like 3 weeks after the shooting, that Gabby Giffords might be well enough to run for the Senate the following year. And I thought, what the hell is this? She just had a bullet ripped through her brain, and there were articles written that she was standing up, looking outside, looking at the view. And I have no medical expertise, but I went through my son's traumatic brain injury, and I knew that there was no way that Gabby Giffords was running for the Senate, and when you say she communicated or she talked, there are lots of different, that takes in lots of different things. But that was, I should go back and look at that column, because that was a good column. Yeah. Thanks for that, Nathan.
Yeah. If we go even further back, in 2001, you took a chance on a CNN refugee named Nathan Gonzales when you were looking to hire someone for the Rothenberg Political Report. Yeah, well, that's my question. How much of a risk did you think you were taking? I really don't know the answer to this question, but how much of a risk did you take by bringing me on?
I didn't take much of a risk. I knew the person who gave you a great recommendation, Karen Dessauer, who had worked for me and later worked for ABC News and CQ and a number of places. I was always more worried about the person coming in, how they would fit into the circumstances, particularly when I was surrounded by conservatives. That's not 2001, but that's the mid 1990s. But I figured if it didn't work, we'd find some way to deal with it. You seemed like a reasonable person.
Find some way to deal with it. Says the New Yorker. Like, that's a little concerning, but I'm glad it worked out.
No. There was somebody else I hired once because somebody was investing in my newsletter and said, "Oh, you need to hire somebody." I hired a perfect person, and then shortly after, the person who was invested in my company said, "I don't want to invest anymore. I need the money out. I'm losing too much money off of it." I told him I can't make a lot of money on a newsletter, but some people wouldn't listen, and so. Here I had just hired somebody who was a perfect hire, and I had to let that person go. And but I didn't just let him go. I said, "I'll pay you until we find something, but I'll help you find something." You just have to be a decent human being. I mean, there are lots of people who aren't, or who are arrogant to the point of being obnoxious, but you in particular, Nathan, you were one of the good guys.
Well, I remember you wanted to see writing samples because you said, I can teach you politics, but I have no interest in teaching you how to write. So, which was it, because I did not grow up as a political junkie, as you know, and some people that have been listening to this podcast know. Yeah. My path was a little bit different than others who came to the political handicapping world. But
well, yeah. Stu, I'm curious, what do you think is the best quality for a political handicapper to have? I mean, is it that ability to be dispassionate, like you were talking about earlier, calling the balls and strikes? Is it, being a good person, like we're talking about now? Or is there something else that you think is really kind of the essence of doing what we're all doing as well as we can?
That's hard. you have to be analytic and dispassionate, I think. Although nowadays, I don't understand how people do it. I don't think I could do it the way you guys are doing it. That's the way I used to do it. But there's so much anger in the country and such a deep division and I think such a significant threat to the country, to be honest, to democracy, that I couldn't just dispassionately sit by. So I admire what you've been able to do or continue, and I hope I had some role in that. You certainly have to build relationships with people who because otherwise you get nothing but bullshit in this town, and and among political operatives and staffers. But if you can build relationships, and I think at least you can begin to have the career that you guys are having, where you can treat colleagues kindly and fondly, and while at the same time knowing that you're still journalists, you're still trying to uncover those lost diamonds who are running for Congress, and nobody gives them a chance, but they're, like the guy who ran for mayor of New York. Nobody gave him a chance initially. So you have to be analytic. You have to be sensitive to people, and you have to build relationships, I think.
Oh.
And you have to be a good writer. What I told you, Nathan, was I always believed that. Unfortunately, sometimes I got people who didn't know how to write, but you did. I didn't have a problem with you.
Well, I sometimes I experienced that maybe previous academia career, because when you were editing my pieces, there were times where it was just full of red. I mean, back then we weren't doing Google Docs. I was actually submitting a hard copy, and there'd be so much red. I'm like, all right, that's good. I have room to improve. Everyone needs a good editor. Everyone needs a good editor.
Yeah, I desperately need a good editor. So I know I used to do that. That's the way I used to teach too. I used to tell it like it is.
And I've already seen an evolution of back when we were working together, and I just had more of an opportunity to be deeper into the weeds of some of the races, because you were doing lots of wearing a lot of different hats. And now things have flipped a little bit, where Jacob is often in the weeds of some of these races, and I'm sure he gets frustrated with me if I can't remember a candidate's name or mispronounce a name. But I've seen the tables have turned a little bit in this world.
Yeah, the business has changed. Journalism has changed.
I gotta ask, because this is something that I have wondered about for the 5.5 years I've worked at the newsletter. We're the only ones with the tilt category. It sits between toss up and lean. It makes us unique. Cook doesn't have it. Sabato doesn't have it. None of the other guys have it. How did this category come about? And did you get grief for it? Did people like it? Did you ever consider it's too much having, all these categories? We need to trim the system down.
Yeah. So at one day, 1 week, 1 month, I don't remember when it was, that I got really frustrated by all these toss-ups that we had. And the toss-ups that the Cook folks had, and toss-ups that other people had. And I thought about it, and I said, well, what is our job? Our job is to convey to our readers, to give them some sense on relative strength of the candidates. And by having so many toss-ups, it seemed like we weren't making distinctions. So I said, well, let's create a toss-up tilt category that it's a toss-up, but we're trying to show differences in where various candidates are positioned. And nobody else has that. Everybody else has lean, likely, and safe, right? Is that still true?
Yep.
I just think that if I was a subscriber and I saw 35 races that are toss-ups, it would drive me crazy. You mean there's no difference in these races? So I just came up with the toss-up tilt, and I wrote that these are toss-up races, but we're trying to give our subscribers a sense on which ones are more likely to be taken over than others. And so we have the tilt, and it was as simple as that. And I still believe that. Some people always say, oh, I've somebody like Alan Lichtman, Alan Lichtman. Alan Lichtman will
That's
say,
a whole other hour, Stu. I don't think we can get to Alan Lichtman.
He's picked every presidential race since Tippecanoe and Tyler 2 or something. And and my attitude has always been, I'm not doing this as a game. I'm trying to inform people about where the candidates stand relative to one another, and that's how the toss-up tilt came into being. It was I just got tired of too many toss-up races.
Well, you'll appreciate that I managed to convince any number of people that we were introducing another category called wobble, which sat in between toss-up and tilt. For April Fool's one year, I did a little mock-up of a graphic for the wobble rating, and some friends, some former guests of the podcast even were taken in by that, which I thought was pretty funny. So
that is
maybe one day we'll have another couple categories to talk about down the line.
That's smart and funny, so that's even better.
Well, Stu, thank you for coming on the podcast, but thank you for really laying the foundation and setting the path for me and for us to get to do what we do. I'm grateful for, not just from a professional business, but as a friend and fellow baseball fan and mentor and leading by example. I'm indebted to you, probably eternally indebted to you. So thank you.
Well, you know how I feel about you guys and about the newsletter and about Roll Call. And I don't know whether I contributed much over the years, but my wife says I was entertaining, so I guess that's good enough these days.
Those can be the toughest critics, so that's high praise.
Thanks so much for having me.
And now it's time for our final segment, Look What I Found, where we talk about anything that we've discovered recently. Lately it's been political, but sometimes it's not. Jacob, what did you find?
I found Gordon Ramsay's new or latest cooking show. It's called Gordon Ramsay's Secret Service. It is essentially the same show that Gordon Ramsay does in all of his television escapades. He comes to a struggling restaurant and helps them become better. This one, the conceit is that he is spying on them. They don't know that he's there. They think it's just a regular renovation show. He's got cameras all set up. He sneaks in the middle. Each episode begins with him sneaking in the middle of the night to take a look around the kitchen and shine a black light on all the disgusting things going on there. And then, it turns into like a Kitchen Nightmares or 24 Hours to Hell and Back, whatever, his MO is. But it's fun. It's silly. They were in DC at the Parthenon on Connecticut Avenue for the first episode. So I appreciated that they would intersperse. They would start out with these big establishing shots of DC, the National Mall, the memorials, the monuments, and then it would just be like Connecticut Avenue and far northwest. But they would never give you, if you watch the show and you didn't know DC, you would have the impression that like this Greek restaurant was like steps away from the Lincoln Monument.
I mean, a lot of steps, but
Yeah.
you could take some steps.
Yeah.
And not that long ago, didn't you go to Gordon Ramsay's, one of his restaurants at the wharf?
I did. I went to Gordon Ramsay's fish and chips at the wharf. The fun one, though, I went to Dewan, which was a restaurant that he went to on Kitchen Nightmares in Port Washington on Long Island. That was a real treat, and I got to meet the maitre d', who's a main character in the episode. So that was
Okay.
fun.
Okay. Well, I found a show that is about 20 years old, but there's a show called Las Vegas that aired in the early aughts. It's on Roku channel, and I should set the stage a little bit that when I often work late at night because it's the time when things are finally quiet in my household, and I need to watch. So I need something going on in the background, but not something that is intellectually challenging or I really have to watch the plot. And so Las Vegas qualifies, and so it's a show, about a casino and things that are going on. And at first it's James Caan is the casino owner, and then later it's Tom Selleck. And I don't remember when I watched it the first time what that transition plot wise looked like. But anyway, it is the kind of perfect show to be on in the background when I'm trying to, deal with rating changes and members of Congress retiring. So yeah, I discovered a 20-year-old show, Jacob.
Yeah. Well, I hear James Caan in casinos, and I'm sold. So I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's you'll do other more intellectually stimulating things in your life, but it's a very formulaic but fun ride.
Cool.
At Inside Elections, we provide nonpartisan analysis of congressional, presidential, and gubernatorial races. With a combination of reporting and data, we break down the key races and bring valuable context to complex elections. Go to InsideElections.com to subscribe to the biweekly newsletter. We have individual subscriptions as well as group packages that are tailored for corporate and association PACs. If you like today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast. Rate us on your favorite platform. If you're watching on YouTube, click the thumbs up and subscribe as well. If you didn't like today's episode, please email Charlie Cook. We also want to thank our producers, Alan Tazinski and Melissa Lenner of Pretty Easy Podcasts, and our associate producer, Conrad Tolosa. Please come back and join us again next time.